the Kansas City Chiefs.
Touchdown! Kansas City!
It's Ned Talk, your live and local Chiefs pregame show, hosted by Ned Reynolds, Joe Western, and the B-Team, proud members of the Chiefs Radio Network on 104.7 The Cave.
Here we are doing our first Sunday edition of Ned Talk this year. Ned, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. And you?
I'm doing fine. Alex Scott is with us, too. Alec, how are you?
Doing well. Excited for football.
And how are you, Mr. Roberts?
I'm doing great. I am feeling good.
Well, Bama won yesterday. Of course you're doing great.
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely, you're doing great because Bama won yesterday. Okay, I'm going to ask all you gentlemen to put on your teacher hats, and let's give a grade to the Kansas City Chiefs for their first game of the season. We'll start with the prof. We'll start with Mr. Reynolds. What grade do you give Kansas City for their performance last week?
Well, they played well at the very start, and then, in all honesty, I think conditioning got to them because, after all, these guys, many of them were playing their first game, had not played in the exhibitions at all, and I think they got gassed at the end of it. So because of that, we'll lower what should be an A to an A minus is what I would give them.
I saw that a lot on the defensive side of the ball, but it appeared to me that the defense was out on the field quite a bit.
That's what I say.
Yeah, the Baltimore ran a lot of offensive plays in that game, and when you run a lot of offensive plays, you're going to gas out the other side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball. But I don't, let me get this out of the way right away. I didn't feel any stress watching that game. I felt like the Chiefs were in control of that game all the way. You giggle.
Well, if Mr. Lively went to the pedicure, they didn't cut his nails short enough. It was very dicey at the very end because had it not been, and guys, it was an eighth of an inch that
he was wearing
on.
white shoes. They would have called that a touchdown.
They would have called it. They probably would have. But over and above all that, though. The Chiefs played well. They have a lot of quickness. That's how they've signed their team to have these really quick athletes, and that's how they beat everybody else because they're faster. That's not that the other teams aren't, but their style of play isn't based on speed, and Kansas City's is because they have the horses to carry it out. And I think that's how they're going to win most of the games this year with that quickness.
Alec, what about you?
I think I'd give them a B+. I mean, ultimately, you play well enough. Any game you play well enough to win's an A. That's what they're going to tell the media. But then they know they have things to work on. Ultimately, they did enough to win. They did feel like they were in control of that game. You did see when Baltimore thought they had a touchdown, Harbaugh was holding up the two fingers, saying we're going for two. So that was. To say that you felt no stress, I'm not a Chiefs fan, so I didn't feel any stress either. But I felt the game was tight, and the Baltimore's was there to win it. Neither team, I think, put their best foot forward, but that's part of what playing in Week 1 is like. Nobody is putting their best foot forward right now, True. And if you are, I'd worry that you're putting it forward too quickly. Exactly. So these teams still have things to work through. Baltimore has a couple defenses lapses they could look at afterwards. Kansas City can look at some execution things that they did as well. But they played well enough to win. I'd give it. That's a very good team they beat. So I'd say a B+ is a fair grade.
Alec, one of the things that we discussed during the course of the week was there was a comment that came out of the Baltimore locker room that was, that's our worst game of the season. My take on that was probably Kansas City's worst game of the season too.
Yeah, I think that's what you want in Week 1. If you're gonna start anywhere, start at the bottom and build up. I think Baltimore is going to be they're a little pouty because they lost, so that's definitely going to be natural. But I don't think they played a bad game, and I think these are two teams that could certainly meet later in the year. But a big part of that game, a thing I didn't know about Baltimore going in, I didn't know they lost 3 of their starting 5 offensive linemen from last year, and it looked like it. Because if that had been any quarterback other than Lamar Jackson back there, Kansas City might have won by 50, the way they were getting pressure. So props to the Chiefs' defensive line to keep a very special player on the move, run him around. He was probably very tired by the end of it, and he ultimately missed the one throw to tie the game that was there to be made. So,
what about you, Josh?
I'd give him an A-. I agree with what Alex said. If you win the game, you're going to be in that A range, no matter what your mistakes are. I feel like they probably did have some conditioning issues in that second half. They looked great to start, As far as Baltimore, that's a Baltimore team that's going to win a lot of games with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. If those guys stay healthy and that offensive line gets better, that offensive line made a lot of mistakes in the first half with the lining up wrong, where their heads weren't at the belt line of the center. I mean, come on, those are rookie mistakes that none of these guys should be making at this point. You know that's the rule now, so move up 1 foot, and you're in the right spot. And for those, they got called like 3 or 4 times in the first half for
right.
that,
and
which
some
totally
of them
killed drives
consecutively.
Yeah, and they totally killed drives that Baltimore was on, or it would have been a closer game going into the half. So the Chiefs played well. I think exactly what we were talking about happened. The fast guys pulled the D-backs back, which opened up the middle of the field for Rashee Rice and whoever else we were talking about. And so I think that the game plan worked perfectly for the Chiefs in that sense, because they have this core of receivers now that it's going to be hard for people to match up with.
Ned, were you surprised that once again Baltimore seemed to go to a stunning kind of game scheme where we all felt we were going to see a healthy showing of Derrick Henry during the game, and they started that way, and then they quickly went away from it?
Well, the Chiefs lined up to stop Derrick Henry, and they did. The Chiefs' defensive line and linebackers are really good.
Oh, yeah.
And they put the hammer on him. They knew he was going to be the one who was going to do the bulk of the running, as that's why they got him. But Henry, he can't do it by himself. He's got to have the blocking. And you pointed out, Alec did, the fact that it's a very young offensive line. They weren't ready for that. They weren't ready at all. They didn't clear the holes for him. They didn't influence the linebackers, Bolton and company, out of the scheme of things. And as a result, the Chiefs tacklers were right on Derrick Henry almost right from the start. He just couldn't gain any momentum. So you're saying, well, let's go to the passing game. Well, that doesn't work either, because you've got to put pressure on Lamar Jackson, and when he does, you've got a quick defensive backfield that he's throwing to in quick action, and that's not going to work. You have to make so many adjustments when you're playing Kansas City. It's just awfully tough for any football team.
The defense looks very similar to the one that they put out on the field last year. They did a really good job shutting down the receivers. There were a couple of plays. I would almost go so far to say as 60 to maybe 70% of Baltimore's snaps were close to being broken plays. Mm-hmm. There were just something where Lamar Jackson was making something happen.
And not every quarterback they're facing this year is going to be Lamar Jackson. That's what plays to the Chiefs' favor.
Yeah.
I think, I said a second ago, if that had been not Lamar Jackson, that game with no running lanes, a thin receiving core, good tight end play, but if that had been a non-mobile quarterback, I think Kansas City would have really shut that game down. It was only Lamar's ability to run, but that's why he ended up with pushing 20 rushing attempts in the game. Right. It's because they had to. They didn't have anything else going for them, and he left his heart on the field. Sure, I think he had a very good game, but very good games don't beat Kansas City. You got to play near perfect games to beat Kansas City.
I'm going to say this begrudgingly, Josh, because Alec and I talked throughout the week, and I said to Alec, the best team on the field was the Chiefs. The best player on the field was Lamar Jackson, which I'm not a Lamar Jackson fan. I mean, yeah. I get closer to one now after seeing that performance last week, because the Chiefs could not do anything to stop him. They had the receivers covered. They had him fleshed out of the pocket, and then all of a sudden he's getting 10, 12, 15 yards.
Right, and I think that's more of a testament to his talent than it is a detriment to the Chiefs' defense. The Chiefs' defense, they played their game, and that was the play. Make Lamar Jackson beat you, and then he did quite a bit. But, like we've said before, he can't carry that team on his shoulders all season. They've got to be able to – Derrick Henry's got to be able to average his 5 or 6 yards of carry that he averages or whatever, and their receivers are going to have to get open, pardon me, at some point. So, I mean, it was fascinating to see his ability level, but I feel like what you said is accurate. I wasn't worried that he was going to single-handedly beat the Chiefs, because they have too much. They have too much on defense and offense.
This is Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, local, live, talking about the Chiefs and the Ravens. Last week we're giving out grades. What about we've spent a lot of time talking about the defense because they were on the field so much. What about the Chiefs offense? I thought they looked same old that we got from Kansas City. And that is, at times you thought that every time they touched the ball, they were going to go down the field and score. But there were some puzzling play calls during the game. Like all of a sudden they decide that they were going to be a between the tackles team for a couple of plays. And that's not who they are, but they seem to want to try to establish that at some point.
But Joe, keep in mind that when Kansas City needed to score, they did.
Yeah.
And it's very tough to stop them, very tough to slow them down. And you don't, after all, that was the opening game of the season. You've got 16 more to go. You don't want to show your hand with all the plays that you have in the repertoire. But the fact is that they can score, and they can score, I'm not going to say at will because this is a pro football game with pro athletes, but they can score when they really have to. They can get those points on the board.
What struck you offensively about that game, Alec?
Versatility. I think this is a team that can run the ball really well. The middle of the field, I think, is going to be a big, strong suit for them with the way that Rashee Rice can work in there. That was the bread and butter. That was worked better than anything else. Was they would go 5 wide and just matchup wise, they'd get Rashee Rice on a linebacker, and it was just a slam dunk every time. I was very surprised to see how much more of it was Rashee Rice versus Travis Kelce. Not that Kelce. Some of his stuff he doesn't show up on a stat sheet, whether it's run blocking, whether it's drawing double coverage, things like that don't show up. So I'm not going to say he was a non-factor. But if you just look at the stat sheet, you'll go, Kelce only caught 2 balls last week. Meanwhile, Rashee Rice had most of the receptions and a lot of yardage. So, but Pacheco and the running game are going to need to be a part of it, especially when you get down late to some of these grinded out games that they will find themselves in at times. They've got the defense for it. They want to get the running game for it. But they also showed the speed. They've got guys who can stretch the field. Xavier Worthy he only got 3 touches. He made the most of them. And it's going to be important for him to develop fast because Hollywood Brown is now officially on IR for regular season length. If we're going to see him again, it would be postseason.
What'd you think, Josh?
Well, I agree. I think their offense, they still do all the silly play stuff, which I would love to see them just totally dominate an opponent all 4 quarters or 3 quarters and then put the subs in or whatever. But they tend to play around. Like it's almost like they have a confidence level where they think, we can do some cutesy plays now because we can get back to what got us these touchdowns earlier. I would rather see them just score, and then go sit down.
See, that's where I disagree with you at because I think that's who they are. I think
the cutesy play is just part of who they are.
No, I think that's who they are. I think it's when they try to be a traditional football team that they stall their drives. I don't think it's the cutesy plays that kill them. I think it's what I described to you guys when we went into this little segment was that to me it's puzzling that they throw a couple of passes, they go 15, 20, 30 yards down the field, then all of a sudden it's like Andy Reid says, you know what, let's be the Pittsburgh Steelers from the 1970s.
The 2020s,
yeah. And we're just going to run the ball between the tackles, and they do that for 2 plays, and they get shut down, and then they're forced to do something in a 3rd and long situation, which is always difficult for any team.
I think a lot of it goes into how defenses play them, though, because the way the rate that teams are running 2 high safety looks on NFL offensive now is only increasing. They are recognizing the creativity of the offensive systems, the talent of the quarterbacks and the receivers, and the way the rules are bent for points and going, okay, 20-20, we have to play a bit of a shell. They're going to get yards no matter what we do. What we can't do is allow the bombs. So then once that field starts to shrink and all of a sudden you don't have that space behind that the defenders have to worry about, then, the defense can adjust and the offense has to try to adjust with some smaller stuff as well where they want to be able to run it and do maybe some misdirect, things like that. So some credit, I think, goes to the defense. There are certainly times where it seems like Kansas City looks like they could just do what they want when they want. But if you do the same thing over and over, defenses will eventually adjust to what you're doing.
That's exactly right, Alec. Exactly right. And remember now, you have a lot of very intelligent experienced defensive coaches who are coming into the game. It may take them a year to figure out what that offensive scheme is, but they will come up with a defensive plan that will maybe not stop, but certainly slow a lot of that high-powered offense that maybe the Chiefs and other teams have. And you've seen it time and again. It does come to the fore, and it will probably for the Chiefs, but I don't think this year, because the terrific speed that they have there is awfully tough to blunt.
Xavier Worthy, let's stop and talk about him for just a minute. That first touchdown that he scored, a jet sweep, was something that we saw a lot with Tyreek Hill on the team, and it's something that they used to run with McCole Hardman quite a bit too, because McCole Hardman's no slouch; he's a speedster. But this seemed different. It seemed, dare I say, Tyreek Hill-like. What do you think, Ed?
It probably is, because after all, it's based on speed, and Xavier Worthy and some of these others have lightning speed to work with. That's not to say the other teams don't, but the way the Chiefs have their offense formulated, it is really difficult to see ahead of time what's coming up and to be able to come up with a defensive scheme to stop it. It's the speed factor, and they do have that, and Worthy and Pacheco and people like that they fit right in the scheme. Unfortunately, Hollywood Henderson will not be in. Oh, I called him Thomas Hollywood. I knew I was going to do that. Hollywood Brown was not there. Get so used to that guy's nickname and all that. But nonetheless, he won't be there. Does that halt their plans? And they know, because they still have Smith-Schuster, who, while he is not of that quickness, he certainly has the ability to get free.
Well, you've got to, we've talked about this over the last few weeks. Chiefs have a very interesting wide receiver core. They have a lot of depth there. McCole Hardman, as we mentioned, has got a lot of speed. He's on the second string right now. Smith-Schuster had a tough play, almost made an incredibly great catch in that game, but it was a really tough play, and he gave it his all. And then, just glimpses of Xavier Worthy. Obviously, this year, Rashee Rice is the number one target for the Chiefs. If he's there, they're going to go to him. And Travis Kelce didn't have to do a lot in that game. He didn't play a central figure in that game. What did you think of that, Alec? Just 2 catches.
Yeah, and it's I think it's something that Kansas City would probably like to develop. Everybody knows how great Travis Kelce is, and Kansas City knows that everybody knows how great Travis Kelce is. So you need something else. So Rashee Rice, I think, is that something else. Travis Kelce's on, since Tyreek Hill left especially, has been the top receiver on this offense. It's only 1 week. It's early, but I think you could say this might be the start of a trend where maybe Rashee Rice is going to be the number one option in this offense now. That's not to say Travis Kelce won't be very productive, but maybe they're starting to retool things a little bit, especially with that extra speed help outside. Xavier Worthy did look good with the opportunities he got. They're going to need to get him more than 3 touches a game, because that end around was very impressive. The second touchdown, that was a busted coverage. My speed would have scored a touchdown on that one. The corner let him go, and you saw him turn around, see there was no safety, and his arms go up in the air and go, what? And then he made a third catch as well. So now that we know Brown's not coming back, Xavier Worthy, I think his insertion into the offense might get expedited a little bit, because they're going to need him. They need that guy now. They're down a piece they were counting on, a more experienced piece that had similar speed. But, they were able to work in all these guys. They kind of have specialists, guys who are good at certain things, but it's a deep room where each of these guys can do their part.
Josh is a guy that played for Bob Price and loves Alabama. What do you think of this running back group that they've got there?
Oh, I like the Chiefs running backs. I think Pacheco is the guy, and I mean, last year he was averaging 5 yards a carry, and they didn't run him that often. So I think what we talked about earlier, they have to try to establish a run, because that's going to open up that passing game even more for them. Because if the defenses have to move 8 guys into the box to stop the run, then 4 of those receivers are going to be wide open.
That's exactly what I was talking about. That's
Bob Price football.
Bob Price Alabama football thinking. That day's gone. Let me just put there. It is the past now.
They are not going to move
the run.
8 guys into the box very often, unless the running back's getting 10 yards a carry every carry. But I think the running back core is good for the Chiefs. I think they've got good guys. They've got talented guys. And I also wanted to say, what a great first game for a rookie, for Xavier Worthy to have. I mean, 2 touchdowns, 3 catches. That guy has the potential to be something special for the Chiefs, and that speed is impressive. And so it's exciting to see because, last year that's what we talked about with them is they need some receivers. And they went out and got them.
And bonus, he wasn't detained by the police before the game started.
Exactly.
When we come back, we'll talk about the Chiefs and the Bengals. That's a game coming up today on 104.7 The Cave.
You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network. Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network.
About 35 minutes away from the start of the Chiefs pregame show right here on 104.7 The Cave. Mitch Holtis, Dana Hughes, Dan Israel. A whole bunch of people getting together, talking about Chiefs and getting ready for the game this afternoon. 3:30 kickoff. Chiefs and the Bengals, 3:25, I think, technically, is the specific time. One final thing I wanted to go over with you guys before we move on to today's game. Were you at all, any of you, surprised at the way the Chiefs handled the new kickoff rule?
Didn't really notice any difference. They were hesitant, like all these teams are, because it is new and it takes some mental adjustment to be able to regulate your thought process after decades, centuries, as a matter of fact. You're doing it the old way. But no, I didn't really notice them being any different from anybody else.
I was surprised that they were just like, well, screw it. We'll just kick it through the end zone.
Right.
Yeah, these teams with these big leg kickers are just saying, I would rather risk I just give you that 5 more yards than what we were used to than the return. Though, to start today's Saints-Cowboys game, I guess, lost to me and probably a lot of people in this rule, if you can bounce the ball in the catch zone, the goal line to the 20, and then it bounces through the end zone for a touchback, they get the ball at the 20 as opposed to the 30.
Oh. That's right.
And the Cowboys kicker came up, aimed it perfectly, bounced it in there, and it rolled out of the end zone, and the Saints got the ball at the 20. The Saints went 80 yards for a touchdown.
In air out of the end zone, then it's out to the 30-yard line.
Yep.
So
if you can,
different.
It's a bounce shot, so it's something that takes some skill to do, but some of these kickers are skilled enough to do it, but the return teams will adjust by lining their returners in such a way that they can cover it. So it's going to be a developing thing, but I think it's going to be boring watching Kansas City defend it because they're just going to say, Butker, just bomb it out of the back. We'll take the 30.
I disagree with you, Ned, because I felt like they weren't hesitant at all. They're like, yeah, we're just not going to mess with this. I felt like that was totally their game plan.
That's kind of the way I felt.
And I think the Ravens started out to go, well, we're going to try this the first time, and then after that, they're like, screw it, too, and they just kicked everything out of the end zone, too.
That's the way I saw it, too, Joe, is that the Chiefs were like, nah, just kick it in the end zone. It's just an extra 5 yards. Who cares?
Yeah, so the talk before the season, how's everybody going to handle this, is we're just going to do it like we normally do.
We'll
just take the 5 yard. But the big thing for the NFL is that the injuries, that was the main reason they wanted to change the rule, was so guys weren't flying down the field at full bore and colliding with each other.
I'll tell you, it is weird. It was weird to watch everybody just standing still when the ball's going over their head. It was really weird.
I was like, yeah, they all just like waiting. Come on. I'm actually shocked there weren't more false starts from it, because I feel like those guys would be so antsed up.
I wonder if they even bothered to call that. Yeah. Because I'm sure that there were probably some people who just were moving, but they're like, they didn't move enough.
I would tell everybody really quickly, too, Baltimore tied with the Las Vegas Raiders 6-6 with 1:33 to go in the second. All right, today the Chiefs are playing the Bengals, who lost their first game of the season. Now, this is a team that's got a little bit of a drama surrounding it right now, Ned.
They'll still come in and play a very tough level of football. I'm just not sure they have the skills to be able to stay with Kansas City. For one thing, quarterback play is going to be a lot different because the Bengals quarterback is stationary as opposed to being able to move quite a bit against the pressure that Kansas City is going to put on him. And I'm not sure that the Bengals D-backs, not to mention the fact they have receivers, they have the one who will be the target, target for anything that's thrown. But by the same token, though, they don't have a great plethora of them. And I think you're going to see a game the Chiefs pretty much dominate if Kansas City plays the level of football they're capable of playing.
Drama with this team right now, Alec, is Jamar Chase, who last week was doing the air quotes. Nobody can see this, but I'm telling you, air quotes, he was not feeling well, so he didn't play. He's been in contract negotiations to try to get an extended contract. This week he has said, I am misled by the Bengals. I will not play for them past this season.
Yeah, he has said he's not going to pursue a long-term deal during the year. He did actually end up playing last week. He was questionable with a sickness, though the sickness was probably conditioning because he didn't practice or do anything throughout the preseason. So I think what we saw out of Cincinnati last week might have been their worst showing of the year, because I gotta think the way the general populace viewed New England as your week 1 opponent, and you have Kansas City in week 2, I gotta think Cincinnati was looking past New England for Kansas City, and they got for it. That being said, I think this is a team that I don't know if they're equipped to handle Kansas City right now.
They aren't.
The offensive line has always had trouble against Kansas City's front, and it's only been by virtue of strong skill position players and Joe Burrow being able to make quick decisions that they've been able to make it work against Kansas City. But T. Higgins is probably not going to be playing with a hamstring injury. Jamar Chase is still getting up to speed. The defense for Cincinnati is not up the level of Baltimore's that Kansas City saw last week. So it's going to be a very uphill battle for Cincinnati, though I do think they play better than they did last week against New England.
I agree fully. I think they will. I think the Bengals will go out and not roll over and play dead for them, but they don't quite have the skill level that Kansas City does. This is a different Cincinnati team from last year, so I'm thinking, well, we'll get to that in the end, but I'm thinking the Chiefs will dominate this one.
Josh, what are your thoughts about the week 2 opponent, the Cincinnati Bengals?
Well, I think a couple of years ago this would have been a great matchup, but something's happened to the Bengals, and they're slipping back down into the Bungles era of who they used to be. So, if the Chiefs come out and don't play down to the level of their opponent, I think they can dominate this game. Joe Burrow is whatever. He's an okay quarterback. Too bad he played for LSU, but I don't see them matching up very well with the Chiefs today.
So, I mean, what do you think the game plan is, Ned? Do you think they're going to go in and just try to blow them off the field with speed, or how do you think the Chiefs will approach this matchup?
Well, blowing them off the field is a definition sentence, because you don't know what that is for Kansas City. I think the Chiefs will come out and dominate in the early going, but they have a tendency, as Josh has pointed out, get a 14-0, 17-0 lead, maybe to lay back a little bit and not display all the weapons that they have, because after all, this is a long season. We talked about that earlier, and you don't want to give your future opponents any idea of what you can do. I think they get out, establish a lead early in this ball game, then hold it, and if Cincinnati does by some chance make a challenge out of it, well, then the Chiefs go back to plan 1, which is throw that ball and get Xavier Worthy free, or Smith-Schuster in a clutch situation, or even Kelsey to come out there and play, and certainly have Rashee Rice in there as well. So, indeed, the Chiefs have just all the weapons going for them.
Alec, do you think it's really too early in the season to kind of fully game plan against any opponent?
It can be hard. The biggest thing you have to work off of is what did they do last year, without being able to really know what are they going to do this year, and things can change. We saw it last week. Baltimore's front line was not the same front line that they faced at the end of the last season. That ended up being a positive for Kansas City, but sometimes it's going to be a detriment. I got to think, with Kansas City's new weapons and old returning weapons, Cincinnati's offensive struggles, I have to think this is going to be a game where they're going to play soft coverages. They're going to make Kansas City take long drives. If they have it their way, Kansas City is going to get 6 possessions in the game total, and they hope they hold 3 of those to field goals and then see what happens the rest of the way. I wouldn't be shocked if Cincinnati, if they play their best game, can keep it close late, because that's how they're going to have to make this be. I don't see a scenario where Cincinnati could even try and run away with this thing, but they're going to try and keep it tight late into the fourth, and then you never know what happens when it's late in the fourth.
Josh, quickly, real deal or overrated Joe Burrow?
Wrong guy. You asked the wrong guy.
Overrated. Come on.
Ned?
I don't think he's overrated. He just is a different quarterback from what the style is these days. He's not his lateral movement is limited, but the guy can throw, and he's got a good head on his shoulders. And if he gets any protection, he can pick you apart. Remember now, he was a big time star at Notre Dame and LSU. He's a good player, very good player.
Alec?
Real deal. He's the real deal. He might not have the support structure, and it's a rare quarterback that doesn't have a support structure that looks like they're the real deal. But I do think he's one of the tops in the NFL.
When we come back, we'll talk about some of the other NFL storylines as we get you set for Ned Talk
on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network. Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network.
Consider us the appetizer before the Chiefs pregame show, which starts in 20 minutes right here on 104.7 The Cave. It's Ned Talk, a local live sports talk show. Ned Reynolds, Joe Weston, Alex Scott, Josh Roberts. It's 9-6 halftime. Ravens and the Raiders, and Antonio Pierce was intently talking to his offensive coordinator. If the Raiders don't start turning things around offensively, that guy's job's probably not going to last through the season. Yeah. As that was the big one of the big topics of conversation during this week.
Do need to make a correction too. I had mentioned that Burrow was a Notre Dame transfer. It's Ohio State that he transferred from. I knew it was one of the big schools, and
same difference.
My mind is in a fog anymore. So
Ned, if you say he played at Notre Dame, he played at Notre Dame. Okay? Right. We're just going to go with that.
We'll change his transcript.
Don't question the Reynolds.
We're just going to go with that. Any surprises for you guys the first week of NFL action?
Oh, as far as the ranking team, I'll tell you, Florida is really in trouble. University of Florida, they're zip 3, got beat by Texas A&M, which is not a disgraceful circumstance. A&M's very good. Missouri plays them in 2 weeks. But they went down there to Florida and beat the Gators in Florida 33-20. That margin means that Florida's coach, I should say, Billy Napier, is probably on a very short string. Same with Florida State. They got knocked off by Memphis. Oh, my. This is not acceptable.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah.
But in terms of surprise, a little bit of surprise for me that Alabama won as handily as they did at Wisconsin. Now, the Badgers are not a big threat in the Big Ten Conference, but the fact that Alabama, which very, very, very rarely plays north of the Mason-Dixon line, went up there, warm day, wasn't cold for them. They won't go up there in cold weather. But going up there and dominating the Badgers the way they did, and it was domination. That was significant for me. They're a very good football team.
Ned, this is a new era for Alabama. They've got the coach that coached Washington last year, so he's used to cold weather up north.
Well, in Seattle, to some extent, yes. Mm-hmm.
Were you surprised by the number one team in the nation barely winning?
Yes, except that Kentucky is a lot better than what you might think. They go into Lexington to play, and they're going to be jacked up by the crowd. It's going to be loud and so forth. Not that Georgia isn't used to something like that, but to have Kentucky play them quite as closely as they did, yes, that's a surprise. 13-12 was the final. Bulldogs won it. Does it cost them first place? Probably, because the Longhorn, it's already
officially Texas.
So the Longhorns guys are really, really good. That's a good football team. They'll be awfully tough to beat.
Who do you think? It's early, but who do you think? Who's the best team in the nation right now?
Alabama.
Oh, shut up.
Well, he may be right. They may be, except they have an awfully difficult schedule. They've got to go to
Mizzou's
Oklahoma. They have LSU at Death Valley at nighttime to play. They have Tennessee to play. Alabama's in for and they also have Mizzou. And Mizzou's no pushover. I don't think Missouri is in that class, but it adds to the depth of their schedule. Alabama's good, but right now I'd have to say the team that impressed me the most is Texas. The Longhorns are a very solid football team.
How did our own Missouri State Bears do this weekend?
Well, it got off to a 14-0 lead in the first period over Lindenwood, and I'll tell you what really disappointed me was the crowd. It was around 10,000. I was hoping they'd have more than that, but be that as it may, a loud crowd that seemed to be within the student section was fairly well filled. All right, 14-0, and then Lindenwood got back and it made it 21-7 and ended up with it's not a gift touchdown, but they hit Missouri State with a bomb with about 2 minutes to go. 28-14 was the final. The Bears got it won. Now, that's not the toughest game the Bears are going to have this year. They have Tennessee Martin next week on the road, and Tennessee Martin is a nationally ranked, very, very tough Ohio Valley Conference team. And then they get Youngstown, and they get into the Valley Conference schedule, which is a very difficult one indeed. The Bears need to tighten up just a little bit on their defense. The only reason Lindenwood had 14, they were not a good offensive football team at all. Their quarterback struggled a bit, and the Bears were the reason that struggling did take place. But the fact of the matter is the Bears they're just not geared quite right yet. They will be. I think they're going to be a good football team. They have a powerful running back in Chicardier Wright and a good quarterback who's 6'5" in Jacob, I've forgotten his last name now. I've drawn a mental blank. But be that as it may, he can play and he can pick out receivers. They do have a skill level that's pretty good, and I think they'll win. I picked them to win 7 games, and I think they may get that done.
Nice.
Let's turn our attention back to the NFL and talk about some of the big storylines that have happened during the first week. Get your quick takes on these. Number one, Buffalo Bills, their demise is perhaps too soon. They're 2-0 and look pretty good. What do you think about the Bills?
I think they're a good football team. They have shown quite a bit, and you've got just the exact kind of weapons. When is it they play the Chiefs? I know they play them in Buffalo.
They're playing the Chiefs on November 17th.
Okay, so it'll be right when it's cold up in Buffalo, and that wind is coming off.
It's always cold in Buffalo.
And the lake effect will be taking place, and they'll probably have snowbanks on the sideline. Anyway, Buffalo's good. They have a good football team and a good concept.
All right, Alec, Tua, should he play or shouldn't he play? Should he just give up at this point?
Not my decision to make, and I don't want to rule on it personally.
Well, that's not good radio. Okay,
it's not good radio. It's a shame to see, but he's going to get all the medical opinions he can get. I have to imagine he plays. Is my opinion on what will happen, but I don't want to rule on what should happen.
All right, Josh, I'm giving you this one, and it's the wrong guy question, and that is, will the Dallas Cowboys ever win a Super Bowl championship with Dak Prescott as their quarterback?
No is the answer. I hope they don't win one in my lifetime at this point.
I mean, he just signed him to a huge contract. I mean, he's up there. He's the highest paid quarterback per year on annual salary,
which is ridiculous because he has not garnered that much money with his performance in the last few years.
But they're paying him.
I know they're paying him.
You are worth exactly what they'll pay you, and that's I sympathize a little with Dallas. You won't hear me say that much. But if they let him go and went to the market, they're not getting better. So what do?
Well,
you're trapped.
They strive for mediocrity like they've been doing.
The quarterback market is such a way where
have you seen the score of their game?
No.
Saints are 35-16. And
New Orleans is pounding them. Now, that's not to say it'll end that way, but
maybe it wasn't that Carolina's really bad. Maybe New Orleans actually good.
The Cowboys have more problems than just their quarterback, but he has not performed at the level that they think he is capable of performing at. But yet they keep throwing money at him. I mean, I don't blame him for taking the money, of course, but I think Jerry Jones is losing his mind.
Ned, let me throw you a softball here. The Chargers are up 23-3 in the third quarter. Chargers real deal this year?
They're playing Carolina, are they not?
Yes, they are.
And Carolina is the real deal. They're not very good.
Yeah.
Now, the Chargers are. I think we said this last week, too. I think the Chargers have a lot going for them. Herbert can play. And the new coach, Harbaugh, he may get a lot of criticism, folks, but he's not a bad coach. He knows what's going on. No, he's not. No. But the fact is that, I think the Chargers, I think they'll give Kansas City a very good battle, and I think that's coming up in a couple of weeks, too, out in Los Angeles. I think that's where they play first. But over and above that, yes, I think the Chargers have a very good direct concept of what they're doing.
Final quick take for you, Alec. Christian McCaffrey, Hall of Famer or a guy that could be a Hall of Famer if he stays healthy?
If he stays healthy. He's not there yet. He's undoubtedly, I think, been one of the best players of these last few years. So there's an argument to be made he could be the running back of his generation if he can stay on the field, which has been hit and miss. It's either been boom or bust. He's either always around for a season or he loses half of it to injury.
He's on the IR nil.
And he's going to miss minimum of 4 more games now. But, that still leaves 12 games he could come back. And in 12 games, Christian McCaffrey could put up somebody's 20-game stat line.
And, Alec, I think they also played the Chiefs a little bit later on. In fact, it may be in the near future.
Yeah, they are going to play Kansas City on October 20th.
And it's out at Levi Stadium?
It will be there. They're actually, the Chiefs are going to be, I don't know whether they'll spend the week out there or not, because they play the 49ers on the 20th and the Raiders on the 27th.
No, they'll stay out there then.
They probably will.
Wow.
When we come back, we'll make our picks for the game because we're about 10 minutes away from the start of the Chiefs pregame show.
You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network. Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network.
We talked a lot about baseball all season long because most of us around here are really big baseball fans. And I will say we have never given the Royals their due on this show. We talk more about the Cardinals. The Royals have, at this standing right now, they have leapfrog Minnesota. They have a 3-game deficit that they're facing against the Guardians. They could make up that deficit, win that division. Not likely.
They would have to have some help if they do that.
Yeah. But they are a very good baseball team, and they have an 85% chance of making it to the playoffs. The Cardinals have less than 1%. So go Royals.
Tell me there's a chance.
Now, the Cardinals have less than 1%. Cardinals have no chance at all. They are, 12 games out with 14 to play. That's insurmountable.
That's still a chance. Are you ready for history, Ned?
Unfortunately, I am, yes. And I'm a product of it, as a matter of fact. But still, the Cardinals, while they have been very mediocre this year, in my opinion, could give a huge lending hand to the Royals. How? Because the Cardinals have 3 games with the Guardians in St. Louis coming up. And that Cardinals doing well in that one. Kansas City does well, which they have all year long. And you never can tell what might happen.
It is time for the picks, Ned. Tell me who you think your pick is for today's game.
It's the Chiefs, of course. I think the Chiefs get out, as I said earlier, and dominate in the early going, and then just kind of play the game, run the clock a little bit. I don't think the Bengals can challenge them. I'm going to go with Kansas City in a, let's say, pick a hybrid number, 26 to 17.
Alec, your thoughts?
I think this is Kansas City. I think this is one of those where they maintain what feels like a comfortable lead over it. It might be one of those where you say it was like, oh, it was only a this point game by the end, but it wasn't actually that close. I'm thinking Kansas City will pull away late. I'm going to go Kansas City 31, Cincinnati 17.
Josh?
Okay, yeah, I'm picking Kansas City to win this one going away. I think they'll dominate and then probably take their foot off the gas like they kind of do. So I'm going to say this one's probably going to be 35-20.
Okay. Yeah, as you guys were aware, last week I told everybody that I am Constanza this season.
Yeah.
That my gut tells me one thing. I'm going the opposite of my gut. So my gut is saying to me, Chiefs win big today. So I'm going Bengals in a close game. Win this one like 16-14.
16-14 Bengals.
That's my thing. Who's the big player in today's game? Ned?
I will go with the Chiefs in a running back. I think Pacheco has a big game here because once Kansas City gets to dominating, I think they keep it on the ground, and Pacheco is really good at grinding out yardage. I'll go with him.
What about you, Alec?
Chris Jones. He loves to hate Joe Burrow, and I think he's gonna. He's gonna have a big day.
Who's starting for the your Steelers today?
Justin Fields. Russell Wilson's still banged up. It's going to be a one-possession game against Denver. I don't care who we play. It's going to be a one-possession game because that's the way Pittsburgh wants it.
Denver looks like they're not that good this year, too.
Doesn't. So. Yeah, wait. They're going to look better today. Just watch.
Okay, and what about you, Josh? Who's your player today?
I'll say Travis Kelce. I think he'll have a big day today because they'll be able to get him a lot of short passes over the middle.
All right, I would agree with that. I think that Travis Kelce's going to have a big game, and I think after 2 catches and Taylor traveling to the game that they're disappointed with the way that he performed last week, and they're going to want to see more Travis on the TV this week.
The Swifties want to see it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, it's getting ready to start the Chiefs pregame show. Thanks to Ned Reynolds, Alex Scott, Josh Roberts, Corbin Campbell, Mike the Intern, Brian Tyndall, and Nick Fury. Guys, enjoy the game. It's getting ready to start right here on 104.7 The Cave. Go Chiefs!